in the gloriously ostentatious halls of the Galactic Marine Academy, where even the drinking fountains held more degrees than most sentient beings, the arrival of the first human cadet was met with all the enthusiasm of a tax audit. Nestled in the Arcturus star system like an over-polished jewel in an equally pretentious crown, the Academy prided itself on accepting only the most advanced species in the galaxy, which naturally meant everyone except humans. Commander Zixtral, whose name contained precisely 3 more apostrophes than necessary, stood at his office window, watching the approaching transport ship with the same disdain one reserves for someone who puts pineapple on pizza. His crystalline exoskeleton sparkled with the practiced superiority of an institution that had never known failure. Turning to address his fellow instructors, he spoke in a tone that made the word colleagues sound like an insult. Today, he announced, pausing dramatically, for his species believed dramatic pauses made everything sound more important, we face an unprecedented situation. Another pause, perhaps for added gravitas. The Council has decided in their infinite wisdom the sarcasm was thick enough to spread on toast. To admit a human to our prestigious institution, the assembled instructors, representing 12 of the galaxy's most refined species, reacted with a mixture of polite coughs, twitching appendages, and what might have been a psychic eye roll from the telepathic mind-weaver in the corner. Lieutenant CRA, whose species had evolved beyond the need for both humor and facial expressions, raised one of his 7 appendages. But Commander, humans haven't even mastered control fusion on a personal level. How do they expect to keep up with our training regimen? Exactly my point, Zixtral agreed, his crystalline features refracting light in what passed for a smirk. They still use mechanical devices to communicate. He pronounced a phrase as though describing something that had been scraped off the bottom of his hover boot. Outside, the transport ship made its final approach, its engines humming with what could only be described as defiant determination. Inside, Cadet Chen sat calmly, reading an ancient paper book. Yes, actual paper. The kind made from dead trees, much to the horror of the plant-based species in the Academy's botanical department. As the ship touched down with all the grace of a drunken giraffe attempting ballet, Alex closed the book, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, because some classics are classics for a reason. The Welcoming Committee. If you could call a group of beings trying their hardest to look unwelcoming, a welcoming committee waited at the landing pad. Various appendages, sensory organs, and energy fields twitched with barely contained superiority as the ship's door opened with a hiss that sounded suspiciously like a sigh of resignation. Alex stepped out, a regulation duffel bag in one hand and, to the absolute horror of the assembled aliens, a metal container of liquid caffeine in the other. The human wore the standard Academy cadet uniform, which had been designed for beings with generally more limbs and occasionally fewer dimensions, yet somehow managed to wear it with a confidence that made everyone else look like they were wearing it incorrectly. "Greetings, esteemed instructors," Alex said, managing to make the formal greeting sound both perfectly respectful and slightly amusing. "I hope I'm not late. I had to stop for coffee. Apparently, the concept hasn't caught on in this sector yet. They're lost, really." Commander Zixtral's crystalline structure vibrated in what might have been annoyance. "Cadet," he began, his tone suggesting he was using the title under protest. "You do realize this academy has trained the galaxy's elite warriors for over 10,000 years." "Yes, sir," Alex replied cheerfully. "I read the brochure. Though I have to say, the PDF format was a bit retro. We mostly use neural downloads back home." The assembled instructors exchanged glances, their various optical organs conveying a mixture of confusion and concern. Had the human just suggested that their advanced technology was outdated? Surely not. They must have misheard. After all, humans still use combustion engines in some of their vehicles, didn't they? The Academy's training regimen was designed to push the boundaries of evolved beings. Unfortunately for them, humans had spent most of their evolutionary history pushing boundaries they had no business pushing, and Alex was carrying on that proud tradition with remarkable enthusiasm. First came the telepathic combat training, scheduled early in the morning, presumably because the instructors assumed humans would be at their weakest. They hadn't counted on Alex's morning coffee ritual, which the human performed with the sort of reverence usually reserved for religious ceremonies. Cadet, the telepathic combat instructor, Master Plix, announced with barely concealed condescension, "Since your species lacks natural psychic defenses, we'll have to modify the exercise to—" "Actually," Alex interrupted, taking another sip of coffee, "I brought my own defenses." The human tapped their temple with a knowing smile. "Caffeine-induced thought acceleration. Try reading my mind now." Confident in their species' superior mental abilities, Master Plix attempted to probe Alex's thoughts, only to immediately recoil. Their multiple eye stalks twisted in confusion. It's like trying to read a book in a hurricane, while the book is on fire, and the hurricane is also on fire. "That's what we call Monday morning brain," Alex explained cheerfully. "Though I admit the quantum physics equations I'm mentally reviewing might be adding to the chaos." The physical combat trials weren't any less entertaining. The Academy's gravity manipulation chamber was used to test adaptability to various gravitational conditions. The Flown, with their natural levitation abilities, usually excelled here. The density shifters considered it their home turf. Alex, meanwhile, treated it like an extremely expensive bounce house. "This is not a game, Cadet," Lieutenant CRA bellowed as Alex executed a perfect zero-G somersault. "Oh, I'm completely serious," Alex replied, using momentum from a wall push to dodge a training drone. "Humans have been training for this since we invented trampolines. Though I'll admit, the lack of gravity makes it way more fun." The drone, programmed with advanced combat algorithms, found itself thoroughly confused by Alex's seemingly random but shockingly effective movements. It had been designed to counter disciplined fighting styles, not someone treating combat like interpretive dance with occasional punching. Even the technological integration tests, designed to humble species that relied too heavily on physical prowess, failed to faze the human. When presented with a malfunctioning quantum computer, Alex simply turned it off and on again, much to the horror of the tech instructor. But, the quantum entanglement," the instructor sputtered, their bioluminescent spots flashing in distress. "Sometimes the oldest solutions work best," Alex shrugged. "Besides, I noticed your quantum bits were trying to resolve themselves into a game of Pong." Classic sign of a system needing a reboot, the Academy's carefully structured hierarchy began showing cracks. Other cadets, initially dismissive of their human classmate, started paying attention. Some even began asking questions. Much to their instructor's dismay, they were starting to like the human. "In the 10,000 years of this Academy's existence," he began, adding an extra apostrophe to his pronunciation just for emphasis, "we have never, and I mean never, had to rewrite quite so many regulations in a single academic year." The assembled graduates, instructors, and dignitaries shifted uncomfortably. Alex sat in the front row, somehow managing to look both perfectly proper in their graduation uniform and slightly mischievous. The formerly pristine uniform now sported several improvements, including what appeared to be a cup holder made from repurposed quantum shielding. "However," Zix continued, his voice carrying the weight of someone whose deeply held beliefs had been thoroughly challenged, "we have also never seen such innovative approaches to problem-solving." "Rhythm and morale," Alex replied, skating backward through a zero-G section while rewiring a control panel. "Also, it really annoys the targeting systems of the security drones. They weren't wrong." The drone seemed thoroughly confused by the combination of classic rock and unpredictable human movement patterns. One actually stopped mid-attack to run a full-spectrum analysis of the guitar solo. The team encountered a sealed door, its quantum locks engaged and power systems fried. The crystalline cadet prepared to phase through it. The Mind Weaver began a psychic bypass, and the Flown started to seep through the microscopic gaps. Alex pulled out a paperclip and a piece of gum. "You cannot be serious. Commander Zix's voice crackled through the comm system. MacGyver was my childhood hero, Alex explained, somehow managing to bypass the quantum lock with the improvised tools. Besides, sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution, especially when dealing with over-engineered security systems. The final challenge involved retrieving the quantum core from a chamber flooded with temporal radiation. The advanced species cadets began calculating complex quantum equations to navigate the time distortions. Alex threw a tennis ball into the chamber. What possible purpose could that serve? Lieutenant CRA demanded. Testing temporal flow patterns, Alex replied, watching the ball bounce through the distorted space-time. Also, I filled it with sensor equipment. Old Earth trick. Sometimes you need to know where the tripwires are before you start dancing. The ball's erratic movements revealed a pattern in the temporal distortions, a pattern that, when combined with Alex's bizarre but effective combination of roller skating and jury-rigged quantum shielding, created a path right to the core. The Academy's graduation ceremony was a sight to behold. Quantum fireworks exploded in mathematically perfect patterns. Psychic energy formed congratulatory messages in 17 different dimensions, and the refreshments table featured drinks that existed in multiple states simultaneously, until observed. Commander Zral stood at the podium, his crystalline form reflecting the quantum light show in what might have been either aggravation or admiration. It was hard to tell with crystalline beings, especially when they were trying very hard to maintain their dignity. The Galactic Council representatives exchanged glances. One of them was actually taking notes, practically unheard of for beings who had evolved beyond the need for written records. Cadet Alex Chen has demonstrated that sometimes, Zral seemed to physically struggle with the words. Primitive solutions can be surprisingly effective. The Academy's training programs will be updated to include what we're calling alternative tactical approaches, Lieutenant CRA announced, managing to make it sound both like a compliment and a complaint, including a section on the strategic applications of adhesive strips and lubricants. Alex had to bite back a grin. The WD-40 incident during the Zerg maintenance practical had become something of a legend. Furthermore, Professor Vix Neal's energy form pulsed with what might have been resigned acceptance. We will be adding a mandatory course on Earth military history. Apparently, there are some useful lessons to be learned from beings who haven't yet mastered personal teleportation. The other graduates, many of whom had initially dismissed their human classmate, nodded in agreement. They had learned that while quantum physics could solve many problems, sometimes you just needed someone who knew how to fix things with duct tape and determination. In recognition of their unprecedented performance, Commander Zixero concluded, "We are instituting a new award, the Innovation in Crisis Response Medal. Though I must note that future recipients are strongly encouraged to find solutions that don't involve rewiring the Academy's coffee machines." Alex accepted the medal, which somehow managed to exist in 5 dimensions simultaneously while still being shiny. "Thank you, sir. Though I should mention that the coffee machine modifications actually improved its efficiency by 300%. "Yes," the commander replied dryly, "we noticed. The quantum physics department is still trying to explain how you managed to make it brew drinks that increase studying efficiency without violating causality." As the ceremony concluded, several council members approached Alex with barely concealed interest. One of them, a being of pure energy, actually manifested a physical form just to shake hands. "We will be watching your career with great interest," they said, their voice resonating with multiple harmonics. "The galaxy could use more of this, what did you call it? Human ingenuity." Alex replied with a smile. "Personally, I prefer to call it winging it with style." In the end, the Academy had to admit that sometimes the most evolved solution wasn't necessarily the best solution. Sometimes, what you really needed was someone who could look at a quantum singularity and think, "I bet I could fix that with duct tape." And as for Alex, well, they left behind a legacy that would confuse and inspire future generations of galactic Marines. Their thesis paper, "The Strategic Applications of Primitive Technologies in Advanced Warfare Scenarios," or Why You Should Never Underestimate a Human with Duct Tape became required reading. The Academy even had to create a new section in their library specifically for physical books after Alex demonstrated that sometimes the best way to preserve knowledge was to write it down on actual paper, just in case the quantum data storage failed. After all, as humans had known for millennia, sometimes the old ways were the best ways, especially when those old ways involved coffee, duct tape, and the stubborn refusal to accept impossible odds.